Plus, download now.
Hello and a very warm welcome. Thanks for tuning in to News 9 Live. I'm Kabir Naqvi and we're bringing you this special broadcast of top stories from our studios here in the National Capital Region, styled exclusively by none other than Paul Moll, ladies and gentlemen. We've got lots and lots to cover today. Afghans in Pakistan are staring at uncertainty amid deportation plans. Meanwhile, displaced Kharkiv residents are going to have to suffer through another cold winter without shelter or food. Coming and taking a look at some national stories and domestic political stories as well. The Maratha quota stir. We're speaking to the man who's at the center of that particular agitation. Moreover, why is the Delhi AQI deteriorating so fast? Also, we're going to shed some light on the Adhaar data leak that has been alleged by a Western agency. All of that, but first and foremost, the 26th day of the Israel-Hamas war. Updates from the war front. Well, now today marks the 26th day since Israel suffered potentially the worst attack in its brief history as a nation. And here's the latest update from the war front on your screens. At least 13 soldiers have been killed in Gaza's expanded ground operations, this being confirmed by the IDF. At least 8,796 Palestinians, including about 3,600 children, have been killed ever since the conflict began more than 3 weeks ago. Israeli airstrikes have killed dozens in the Jabalia refugee camp in Gaza. A lot of furor that's coming and happening in the Arab countries over this particular development, ladies and gentlemen. The Jabalia camp bombing has sparked outrage in the Arab world. More importantly, a big statement that has come out from Saudi Arabia. Now, the Saudi Arabian delegation has come out and said that it condemns, in quote unquote, in the strongest terms, the bombing of Jabalia. At the same time, ladies and gentlemen, Israel has accepted the attack, and it says that the target was a high-ranking Hamas commander and they could not let go of that particular opportunity. So Israel accepting that particular attack. Already mentioned, 13 Israeli soldiers have been killed in this expansive ground operations inside the Gaza Strip. This is coming out from the Israeli Defense Forces themselves, ladies and gentlemen. To the 26th day, the latest updates. There have been gains that have been made by the Israeli Defense Forces in their ongoing ground invasion in Gaza. This has come out from the Israeli ministry and the authorities. Meanwhile, there seems to be another particular front that Israel now has to battle. Houthis have launched ballistic missiles and drones towards Israel. Israel says that it incorporated its Arrow 3 defense missile defense system to intercept those ballistic missiles, ladies and gentlemen. The Rafah crossing has been opened for limited evacuations. These are essentially foreigners and people who require medical treatment. We don't essentially know how long will the Rafah border be opened for, who is going to be allowed to go in and out, but limited evacuations. Rafah crossing has in fact opened up today, ladies and gentlemen. Well, now 13 Israeli soldiers have died whilst fighting against Hamas terrorists in northern Gaza specifically. The death toll was announced by the Israeli Defense Forces. Now, the IDF added that 2 other infantry soldiers have suffered serious injuries fighting the Hamas in Gaza. The total number of IDF soldiers that have now been killed in this expansive ground operation has reached the number 13. The Israeli Defense Forces are giving a timely update as to what they think the casualties are so far in this ground operation in Gaza on the microblogging website X, formerly known as Twitter. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, despite suffering quote-unquote painful losses in the ground fighting inside the Gaza Strip, has said that the Gaza war would be long, but they will still come out to be victorious.
חיילינו נפלו במלחמה שאין צודקת ממנה, המלחמה על הבית. ואני מבטיח לכם ולכל אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו נמשיך עד שנמלא את המשימה. אנחנו נמשיך עד לניצחון.
But even as we're talking about the 26th day of Israel's war on Hamas, the Israel continuing a ground campaign in Gaza, the Palestinian death toll continues to rise and mount. As per the Gazan Health Ministry, 8,796 Palestinians have been killed so far in this particular conflict. What's even more harrowing is that this includes 3,648 children who have been killed in Israeli strikes since the 7th of October. The Israeli army has also recently deployed missile boats from its navy to the Red Sea area as part of its defensive efforts in response to a situational assessment. This move reflects Israel's commitment to maintaining security in the region. And just yesterday, Israel's military announced the use of the Arrow 3, the aerial defense system. Of course, it has the Iron Dome, it has the Arrow 3 system, and it also has the David Sling. Now, the Arrow system successfully thwarted a surface-to-surface missile in the Red Sea that was launched towards the Israeli territory. The ballistic missile is suspected to have been launched by Iran-backed Houthi forces in Yemen. The Israel Defense Forces, the IDF, noted that their Air Force systems effectively tracked the missile's trajectory and intercepted it at the most appropriate moment and location. Many think that Israel only possesses the Iron Defense System, but in its arsenal, it also has the David Sling and the Arrow Defense System. Let's take a look at the Arrow Defense System. Now, the Arrow Defense System, also known as the HETS, represents a missile family specially designed for interception of ballistic targets. This system encompasses Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 hypersonic anti-ballistic missiles. The system is a multifaceted system designed to detect, monitor, and neutralize ballistic missile threats. The estimated price of a single Arrow missile has been estimated to be around $3 million. Now, this system is a collaborative effort between Israeli and the United States' industries. The IDF also released a new video on Tuesday, which they claim shows soldiers in the Gaza Strip. According to a statement from the Israeli army, their ground troops targeted Hamas and the Hamas outposts in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. This operation aimed at striking anti-tank missile launching cells and posts, which the IDF says was successful. Now, Israel is focusing on the tunnels beneath the densely populated Gaza enclave as a key objective during its ongoing ground offensive. This offensive was launched in retaliation for the surprise attack by the Islamist group Hamas into the southern Israel front on the 7th of October, following 3 weeks of aerial bombardment. And as we mentioned, the Hamas tunnels beneath the Gaza are a prime objective for Israel as it expands its ground offensive into the cramped enclave. What is this tunnel nexus and why is it important? Here's a report. Take a look.
Gaza is Hamas's power base, and the huge tunnel network underneath Gaza is a secret power base within that base. It is Hamas's default go-to place to hide, to conceal hostages, to fire rockets from, to store weapons. So that is why the network is so important to Israel. First of all, it has destroyed a lot of the ground cover above land so that the Hamas fighters do not have anywhere to go if they run. Now, the Israeli troops are moving underground in order to free the hostages, kill or capture the Hamas fighters, and deter or stop them from ever doing this sort of thing again. I've been down some of these tunnels in Gaza. The smaller commercial ones are about 3 to 4 feet wide. The military tunnels are much more sophisticated, concrete reinforced, far deeper. It's going to be very, very, very hard for Israel to flush Hamas fighters out of that network. Hamas launching an attack on October 7th into Israeli kibbutzes and towns was unprecedented. It has shocked and galvanized Israel into a retaliation far bigger than anything we've ever seen before. Many of Gaza's 2.3 million population are now without homes, so there is a humanitarian crisis brewing in Gaza, but Israel is determined not to let material into Gaza that Hamas could use to redouble its assault and attacks on Israeli forces.
Well, now intensifying the ground invasion, Israeli forces attacked Hamas gunmen in the vast tunnel network which is under the Gaza city. The operations were aimed at destroying Hamas and the tunnels used by the terrorists mainly as a hideout and to transport weapons. Now, the IDF struck 300 targets in Gaza City. And it's important to note that the fight in Gaza is bearing similarities to operations in Iraq, where the US-backed Iraqi forces flushed Islamic State fighters out of a tunnel network in the year 2014. But in Gaza, Israeli forces face more formidable infrastructure and more challenging geography. Hamas's tunnel system is more advanced and its fighters are better trained, more disciplined and better equipped. The IDF soldiers have to literally go through the maze of tunnels and literally clear one after the other. The tunnels could also turn out to be an operational trap. Now, Israeli forces supported by armored vehicles were observed operating in southern Israel as well. This happened about 4 days after the commencement of a significant ground offensive in the Gaza Strip. Israel reported that its forces engaged with Hamas gunmen within the extensive tunnel network beneath Gaza. They aimed to free hostages and advance their campaign to eliminate the terrorist group. Israeli forces targeted Gaza's main north-south road and launched attacks on Gaza City from 2 different directions. Even so, as missiles were observed falling onto Gaza, accompanied by explosions and the occasional gunfire. The United States and other countries have stated that they are exploring options for the future of the Gaza Strip. There doesn't seem to be a clear and obvious endgame in sight. Israeli tanks have been active in Gaza for at least 4 days now, following weeks of aerial bombardment. And just today, at least 3 rockets were fired from Gaza into Israel. Israel reported that its forces engaged with Hamas gunmen within the extensive tunnel network beneath Gaza. Meanwhile, a hospital director in Gaza stated that over 50 Palestinians were killed in an Israeli airstrike on a refugee camp in Jabalia, with 150 more wounded. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejected international calls to cease the fighting. There has been no immediate comment from the Israeli military regarding this incident as well. The Israeli Defense Forces also say that Israel bombed the house of a top Hamas official in the West Bank during the Gaza war. Saleh al-Arouri, who is the Hamas's deputy leader, was not there at the time of the attack. Israeli forces took over the house, earlier using it as an intelligence center. The attack was symbolic, targeting al-Arouri, a key figure behind previous attacks on Israel. Additionally, an Israeli forces officer confirmed the killing of Nassim Abu Ajina on social media platform X. The IDF said troops were engaged in fierce battles against Hamas terrorists deep inside of the Gaza Strip, as soldiers and tanks pushed further into the Strip amid the war against the terror group. The military said ground and air forces hit several Hamas positions and anti-tank guided missile squads. According to the IDF, troops have killed dozens of terrorists amid the fighting in urban areas and have also seized weaponry. Meanwhile, at least 1 Palestinian was killed and 2 others were seriously injured as the IDF conducted a drone strike against a target in Jenin, and clashes erupted between Israeli forces and the Palestinians in the West Bank city. Israeli forces reportedly surrounded the home of Jamal Havil, a member of the Fatah Revolutionary Council, during the raid. Now, Havil has done a number of interviews with regional medias in recent days, slamming Israel over the Gaza invasion. But a much-awaited positive news as well. The much-awaited opening of the Rafah border crossing between Gaza and Egypt took place today. The Rafah crossing is going to allow all foreign passport holders to leave Gaza Strip. Critically, injured civilians of Gaza will also be allowed to leave through the crossing. Now, the agreement between Israel, Egypt and Hamas was brokered by Qatar in coordination with the United States. Reports from the border are coming of families and vehicles queuing up to exit Gaza. It's been further reported that Egypt will allow in 81 seriously injured people as well. A line of ambulances was seen waiting to take the sick and injured, as per reports. Sources haven't confirmed the timeline for how long the Rafah crossing would remain open for evacuation. As of now, limited evacuation from the Rafah crossing. Meanwhile, towards the south, wildfires have been reported in southern Lebanon. A plume of smoke was seen near Israel-Lebanon border due to the wildfires. Now, the flames were visible from many miles, and firefighters were seen battling the blaze as well. According to the Lebanese civil defense, the wildfire was possibly caused by Israeli shelling. Lebanon is meanwhile planning to ask the United Nations Security Council to condemn Israel's use of white phosphorus in its repeated attacks against Lebanon. The Israeli military has not commented on the situation as of yet. Now, Yemen's Houthi rebels claim to have fired missiles and drones targeting Israel. Houthis, who are sponsored by Iran, opens another complication in the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas. The firing of missiles further raises the risk of a regional conflict erupting. The Houthis had been suspected of an attack earlier this month targeting Israel by sending missiles and drones over the crucial shipping lane of the Red Sea, an assault that saw the United States' Navy shoot down the projectiles. Meanwhile, shifting our attention back to the Jabalia camp, where an Israeli airstrike killed dozens of people at the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza. Gaza's health ministry has reported that the strike resulted in 50 deaths, with about 150 others injured. Israel has acknowledged the attack and stated that the target was a high-ranking Hamas commander whom they were able to eliminate. They claimed to have neutralized a large number of terrorists from Hamas's central Jabalia battalion who were with the commander at that particular time. Now, the bombing has sparked outrage in the Arab world, and several humanitarian organizations have also condemned the strikes on the refugee camp. Israel has entered the second phase of the war with the intention of eliminating Hamas Israeli tanks, and troops continue to advance towards northern Gaza. Now, Gaza's health ministry reports that more than 8,500 people have been killed in the territory since the 7th of October. Gaza is running dangerously low on supplies of food, water, fuel, and medicine for its 2.2 million residents.
כוחותינו נלחמים כעת בעומק רצועת עזה. מחסלים מחבלים בהתקלויות מטווח קצר, תוקפים מטרות בתקיפות משולבות מהיבשה, מהאוויר ומהים. בשעות אחר הצהריים, כוחות חי"ר ושריון השתלטו על מעוז מרכזי של חמאס במערב העיר ג'באליה. מעוז זה שימש לאימונים לפעולת הטרור שאליה יצאו המחבלים לטבח, ומעבר למרחב החוף ממנו יצאו מחבלים נוספים לטבח ב-7 באוקטובר. במהלך הקרבות חוסלו מחבלים רבים והושמדו תשתיות טרור. זו לחימה מורכבת, חלקה היא גם פנים אל פנים. בקרבות איבדנו לוחמים.
And now focusing on the humanitarian aspect, the White House has today said that 66 trucks of humanitarian assistance entered Gaza in the last 24 hours, and that dozens more are expected to be cleared for deliveries. Now, the White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby told reporters that President Joe Biden will also be later speaking to Jordan's King Abdullah for discussions about Gaza. Kirby said that the levels of truck aid deliveries so far is just a fraction of how much is needed in Gaza, the Palestinian enclave under siege by Israel in retaliation for the October 7th attack on the Israeli public by the Hamas terrorists.
So today I'm pleased to say that another 66 trucks got into Gaza over the last 24 hours with life-saving humanitarian assistance, including food, water, and medicine. It's the highest single-day delivery so far, but again, it's a trickle compared to what needs to get in, and we're going to keep working that very, very hard. Dozens of more trucks are expected to clear today. Expected to clear. I want to caveat it with that. We're obviously watching this as closely as we can. We hope that they all get in, but still, again, it's just a fraction of the need. We're also continuing to press for the resumption of essential services, including water. and the delivery of fuel. Fuel is going to be critical here, certainly in coming hours and days, as the existing stocks are running low to near empty. And of course, we're supporting efforts for safe passage for civilians in Gaza and those wishing to depart, while making it clear that we will not support any forced relocation of Palestinians outside of Gaza. Now, to that end, and to all of those ends, President Biden will speak with His Majesty King Abdullah II of Jordan this afternoon to discuss further cooperation with Arab partners to address this worsening humanitarian situation.
Well, important to note here that Kirby had no comment on the large blast at the Gaza refugee camp in Jabalia, saying he had no information on it. But he said killing civilians is not a war aim of Israel and that Israel is trying to minimize civilian casualties. Now, aid trucks have been trickling into Gaza from Egypt over the past week via the Rafah crossing, the main crossing that does not border Israel. But stories coming out of Israel as well. Kibbutz Be'eri lost around a tenth of its population in the October 7th attacks. The survivors have been evacuated from what is now a closed military zone. At a Dead Sea resort, away from the rocket fire, therapists assess them in their recovery.
Portraying the dead from a time before their world fell apart. Just one of the therapies helping these people process their trauma at this upscale resort on the Dead Sea. It's a place of relative safety in a country at war. Around 1,000 Israelis who escaped the massacre at Kibbutz Be'eri were evacuated here, where they'll live for at least the next few months and try to come to terms with what happened.
Yeah, in 6:30 in the morning, something like this, we heard a lot of bombs and we woke up.
Ella Ben-Ami recalls the moment the ordeal began. Her parents soon texted her from their home up the street. They were in hiding. Hamas gunmen killed more than 100 people in Be'eri that day. Ella feared her mum and dad were among them.
Something like an hour later, I saw a picture of them on Telegram with both terrorists they took them. It's not in Israel, I guess it's in Gaza.
2 weeks later, Ella found this video on Telegram showing her captured mother, filmed by Hamas. So, looking for clues of where they might have been taken, she and her sister went back to their childhood home.
Why? I can't even describe it. It was so hard. Even yesterday when I went to there. I couldn't step on the ground because on every piece of ground I saw bodies, and I couldn't think of walking on that road.
Donations from across the country have been pouring in for people who escaped with only the clothes on their back.
They have to tell it over and over again.
Dina Draw is one of a team of psychotherapists stationed in the hotel to help them. She says the most important thing is to get people talking.
How they couldn't breathe, how they had no food, how they were worried, how they saw in the WhatsApp group that people are in danger, how they escaped, what did they see. They have to repeat it over and over until the story has a narrative. It has a beginning, middle, and an ending.
She says for Israelis, this was an event unlike anything in recent memory.
It's a collective grief. It's something we don't see usually in Israel. You have a terror attack and a soldier is dead, but here, because of the massive numbers, we have a collective grief. And it's also a strong thing of a community that they're going through it together.
Going through it together, but each alone in their pain.
There isn't a family that didn't lose someone. There isn't a family here. All the families lost someone. And even as a kibbutz, we are a big family together. And even I lost friends and neighbors, and everyone lost someone.
The 7th of October was traumatic for all Israelis. And even as the people from Be'eri try to heal, it's clear their trauma will be felt for generations.
Next up, taking a look at some other international and global developments. The White House is aiming for President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping to meet in November in San Francisco and hold a quote-unquote constructive conversation.
US President Joe Biden is set to meet China's Xi Jinping in San Francisco this month, according to the White House. A senior Biden official said that details of the meeting still need to be hammered out. However, it would be the latest in a flurry of diplomacy between the two superpowers, with the Israel-Hamas conflict adding a new dynamic to their testy relationship. Biden and Xi haven't met since last November at Indonesia's G20 summit in Bali, and Biden has yet to host the Chinese leader on US soil since he took office. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre confirmed they aim to meet in San Francisco on the sidelines of the upcoming APEC summit.
The president said he's looking forward to meeting with President Xi. It's going to be a constructive meeting.
Jean-Pierre was also asked whether the US has considered any gestures to help make top-level meetings with Beijing more frequent.
We've been very clear. Our policy and how we move forward with China hasn't changed. This is intense competition, right? That we have said that we want to move forward with China. We understand that. And intense competition means intense diplomacy. That's what you're going to see.
US officials have told Reuters they view the potential sit-down as essential to help ease tension between the two countries on further issues, including Taiwan and a Chinese military buildup in the South China Sea.
The president said he's looking forward to meeting with President Xi, and so not going to get into details about this meeting that's going to happen tomorrow's November, next month. It's going to be in San Francisco. It's going to be a constructive meeting. The president's looking forward to it. Our policy and how we move forward with China hasn't changed. This is intense competition, right? That we have said that we want to move forward with China. We understand that. And intense competition means intense diplomacy. That's what you're going to see. That's what the president is going to be doing, and having, a tough conversation, but important conversation. I'm not going to get into any kind of decisions made on this. This is going to be about the diplomatic conversation.
Well, moving on, North Korea is preparing to close as many as a dozen of its embassies all over the world. As per reports, these include embassies in Spain, Hong Kong, multiple countries in Africa. This move could see nearly 25% of Pyongyang's missions close worldwide. South Korea's Unification Ministry said that North Korea's recent closing of its diplomatic missions was a sign that the reclusive country is struggling to make money overseas because of international sanctions. Meanwhile, shifting our focus to Pakistan, because as Pakistan's deadline for deporting undocumented migrants draws near, Afghan refugees there are worried about their future.
At home with two of his children, Khabon Hamayun's worries may appear far away. But like many other Afghan refugees in Pakistan, they're fully on his mind. The 33-year-old has lived here for 2 decades, but the government's crackdown on undocumented migrants is turning his life upside down. Today he's taken part in a protest and is now queuing up at the UN's local office for refugee registration, hoping for a document that will enable him to stay here and not be sent back to Afghanistan.
These past several years we were given assurances that we would not encounter any problems in Pakistan, but they've now started the process of expelling Afghans. That's why we are protesting. The owner of the house where I live has also warned us to leave. And if we don't, they will contact the local police. And then the police will take legal action against us.
Here in Islamabad, Hamayun ekes out a living at a tandoor. He says the pay is hardly enough to feed his family, let alone fund a journey back to Afghanistan. But along with being evicted from his home, he's also losing this job, another consequence of the authorities' new policy. Millions of Afghans have made Pakistan their home in the past decades of instability in Afghanistan. But a country that was once a refuge has now become deeply inhospitable. Police in this neighbourhood are checking documents and arresting anyone without paperwork. The government claims its policy shift is due to high Afghan crime rates.
There is a general perception that illegal Afghans, and mostly some of them who are legally staying here, they have a role in certain crimes. And these crimes are mostly smuggling of the different products. In 2020, around 225 Afghan nationals were involved in serious crimes, which were apprehended and they were processed according to the law.
Abdul Khalik has lived in Pakistan for 16 years, but is now one of tens of thousands of undocumented Afghans who have taken the difficult decision to return to Afghanistan. For him, the pressure to leave became too much. His family borrowed money to hire trucks for the move, leaving them substantially in debt.
The family has hired this truck for 250,000 rupees. It will take us to Kabul. We have left the rest to Allah. Winter is ahead and we do not have warm clothes, shoes or a roof over our head. We are helpless and will face whatever Allah will do for us.
For this family heading back to Afghanistan, the road ahead is full of uncertainty, just as it is for those trying to remain in Pakistan.
And news coming out of Ukraine as well, where displaced Kharkiv residents faced a second winter without shelter. As cold weather sets in Ukraine, Russia's airstrikes carry a new threat, wrecking houses and apartments and shutting down power just when people need warmth and shelter.
The northern Kharkiv suburb of Saltivka doesn't look much different than it did after the first few months of war, when it was pummeled by Russian artillery. Those who've stayed are now facing their second winter without central heating or even windows. Anna, her mother, and a friend have been living in the basement of their apartment block for 20 months now. They moved their lives underground because it's warmer there. They can heat with this old wood stove.
We can warm up here if we make a fire. If not, it's a lot colder. But you won't freeze. It's much better here than in my apartment.
Anna's building is in fact low on the city's priority list because it's too badly damaged to repair quickly. Several of the buildings in the Saltivka neighborhood are in this predicament, and many of the residents are growing impatient with the city authorities as the second winter of the war sets in. This group of residents meets us outside a row of heavily damaged buildings. Many of them are living doubled up with other families nearby. They're desperate for anyone to hear their grievances.
We were told that our building is on the list of projects for 2024. We're on a list just for the project to start. So where are people supposed to go? It will be winter soon. Their house will be standing in the cold and everything will deteriorate.
The destruction here is staggering. The building suffered multiple direct hits from Russian artillery, and residents say even missiles from warplanes. It's difficult to fathom the cost of rebuilding this, especially while the government is still focused on a full-scale war. In an adjacent suburb, the city is already wrapping up repairs. The buildings had little structural damage, and workers are putting in the last new windows. Some families are even moving back in. Kharkiv's deputy head of housing says he understands why the residents in heavily hit areas like Saltivka are frustrated.
The main problem is that the laws that regulate the procedure for restoration are still being developed. That's why we need to talk with the Kharkiv citizens about it. There are different categories of damage and different approaches to each one.
Anna plans to move back upstairs once the central heating is fixed, which the government has promised to do. She just doesn't know when.
Sometimes we feel like giving up. At first we didn't feel like that, but now more and more we do. We've been expecting the end of the war, but, well...
The winter might be easier to bear if she had something to look forward to once it's over.
Well, shifting our focus to stories from back home. A big step in India-Bangladesh cooperation. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Bangladeshi counterpart Sheikh Hasina inaugurated 3 projects to boost regional connectivity and energy security. The three projects inaugurated are the Akhora-Agartala cross-border rail link, the Khulna-Mungla port rail line, and the Units 2 of the Maitri super thermal power plant. Now, the historic international rail link between Agartala and Tripura and Akhora in Bangladesh's Brahmanbaria district has been keenly awaited and brings much cheer to the particular region. Be it jobs or employment, well, the region is certainly rejoicing the new partnership.
पिछले 9 वर्षों में हमने मिलकर जितना काम किया है, इतना काम कई दशकों में भी नहीं हुआ था। हमने बॉर्डर पर शांति, सुरक्षा और स्थिरता की बहाली के लिए दशकों से लंबित लैंड बाउंड्री एग्रीमेंट किया और मैरीटाइम बाउंड्री को भी सुलझाया। दोनों देशों के लोगों की साझा अपेक्षाओं और आकांक्षाओं पूरा करने के लिए हमने इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर और कनेक्टिविटी के विकास पर विशेष बल दिया।
And next up, a massive data leak has been reported in India that involves personal details of over 81.5 crore Indians. The data was sourced from the Indian Council of Medical Research, according to a report. Now, the data leak was initially discovered by the American cybersecurity firm Resecurity with the threat actor known as PWN-001, must be an ID, sharing the data from and on the breach forums. Now, the leaked information includes Adhaar and passport details, the names, phone numbers and addresses allegedly extracted from COVID-19 test records of individuals registered with the ICMR. The leak is roughly 10 times the population of countries like Iran, Turkey and Germany, making it a significant security concern. Although there has been no official response from the ICMR or the government, the CBI is expected to investigate once a formal complaint is filed in the matter. Various agencies and ministries are involved in addressing the issue, and a standard operating procedure has been put in place to mitigate further damage. Meanwhile, the Apple Snoopgate is something people can't stop talking about, because amid iPhone hacking alert controversy, the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Information Technology is considering summons for Apple representatives to address this particular issue. The committee's secretariat has expressed deep concern regarding the matter, treating it with the utmost seriousness. Now, the matter came to light when several opposition leaders, including Mallikarjun Kharge, Shashi Tharoor, Mahua Moitra, Akhilesh Yadav and others, reported receiving notifications from Apple warning of potential quote-unquote state-sponsored attacks on their iPhones. The opposition accused the BJP-led government of snooping on leaders for political gains and undermining democracy. Manoj Jha said that it is a serious issue and the government has given a very weak argument. He raised a concern as to why only the opposition party leaders were receiving such threats.
मोबाइल से मैंने बात भी की और मोबाइल में मतलब फेस टाइम, फेसबुक, ट्विटर वगैरह मैंने इसमें देखा भी। उसके बाद 30-40% इसका बैटरी था, तो उसके बाद मैंने इसे चार्जिंग में डाला और जब जगदलपुर से निकल होटल से निकला तो इसको चालू करने की कोशिश की, चार्जिंग करने की कोशिश की, पावर बैंक से भी चार्ज करने की कोशिश की, लेकिन चार्ज ही नहीं हो रहा। पता नहीं क्या है
सर। कुछ मेल भी आया है आपको?
अब मैं जानता नहीं, लेकिन ये तो बंद हो गया मोबाइल।
लग रहा है सर। You're also using iPhone, right? Did you receive any message?
No, I haven't received any message. Everybody who's using iPhone, please be very careful.
The Apple has clarified that they have sent several such notifications across the world. Approximately users in 150 countries have received such notifications, and they are also not able to point out the reason why such notifications have got triggered. So for the opposition to allege that the government is snooping or this has been done at the behest of the government is absolutely baseless. the opposition would do well to find some issue to take on the government. They did so during Pegasus, although when the Supreme Court appointed committee asked for their phones to be surrendered for investigation, none of them came forward, and those who came forward, nothing was found untoward. But Rahul Gandhi, apparently under the influence of foreign-funded agencies, keeps raking these issues, keeps making statements, has also held up the parliament, but has never, ever cooperated with investigation. Clearly, the opposition does not have any issues to take on the government, and therefore they are resorting to making these false, malafide allegations.
Next up, it was day 2 of the Supreme Court hearing on the electoral bonds scheme today. The apex court asked if the scheme was disadvantageous for opposition parties, since the ruling side may find ways to gain confidential information about those who donate funds to the opposition. Justice Sanjeev Khanna on the bench pointed out that the fear of misuse of the scheme remains because electoral bonds can selectively be anonymous. While the opposition parties do not know who is donating to the ruling parties, the ruling side can use investigating agencies to question who is donating to the opposition. Arguing for the government, Solicitor General Tushar Mehta said that the scheme is an attempt to ensure clean money comes into elections and not to eradicate the menace of black money in elections. Shifting our focus to the Maratha quota agitation, and the Maratha government, Maharashtra government, beg your pardon, called an all-party meeting to discuss the issue of Maratha reservations in the state. The all-party meeting passed the resolution approving reservations for the Maratha community. Now, the meeting also passed a resolution asking activist Manoj Jarange to call off his indefinite fast. Chief Minister Eknath Shinde said after the meeting in Mumbai, quote-unquote, activist Jarange should cooperate with the government in ensuring quota for the Maratha community, unquote. Now, the Chief Minister also said Maratha should observe restraint and that the government needs time for legal modalities to implement the reservation in the first place. The Chief Minister has appealed to people not to resort to violence and also asked political parties to avoid indulging in any activities that would worsen the situation. The all-party meeting was called after violence that broke out during protests demanding Maratha reservation in a number of places in Maharashtra. Meanwhile, TV9 spoke to the man who is at the center of this Maratha quota stir, Manoj Jarange. Listen in.
ये मराठा शांति से महाराष्ट्र में आंदोलन कर रहा है। अब धीरे धीरे पूरे भारत के मराठी इकट्ठा होकर हमारे काम को पाठिंबा दे रहे हैं। वो लोग क्या कर रहे हैं, ये शांति का आंदोलन है, ये शांति का युद्ध रुक नहीं रहा है, इसलिए कोई तभी जानबूझ के उसको गालबोट लगाता है हमारे आंदोलन को, क्योंकि शांति का आंदोलन ये हम कर रहे हैं उनको अच्छा नहीं लगता, लेकिन उन्होंने कुछ भी किया तभी हम रुकने वाले नहीं।
क्या आप इस तरह की घटनाओं का समर्थन करते हैं कि किसी का घर जलाना, कहीं तोड़फोड़ करना, किसी को मारना पीटना?
नहीं, समर्थन तो हम उग्र आंदोलन का पहले से नहीं करते और करेंगे भी नहीं। लेकिन
पुलिस कह रही है कुछ लोग सीसीटीवी में कैप्चर हुए हैं, कुछ अभी भी जो है पहचान नहीं हुई है, लेकिन कुछ बाहरी लोग भी हो सकते हैं। आपका क्या कहना है कि जो लोग सीसीटीवी फुटेज में कैप्चर हुए हैं वो समर्थक के तौर पर, तो क्या कहना है, वो कहाँ से आ रहे हैं?
नहीं, वो वहाँ से जाते आते होंगे। ये सरकार के लोग क्या कर रहे हैं कि हमने जिसने आंदोलन खड़ा किया है उनको पकड़ रहे हैं, जो उधरे कर रहा है उनको नहीं पकड़ रहे हैं, इनको पकड़ रहे हैं जाते आते आने वाले को, क्योंकि उन पर उसके रोष निकाल रहे हैं। वो शांति से बैठे वाले शांति से बैठेंगे मराठी, वो ऐसा बोल के पकड़ते, लेकिन हम रुकने वाले नहीं है। हम रिजर्वेशन लेंगे पूरे महाराष्ट्र के मराठों को, रुकेंगे नहीं। कितने दिन आप अन्याय करोगे मराठी के ऊपर, मराठी आप रुकने वाले नहीं।
Shifting our focus to Manipur next, where a wreath-laying ceremony for SDPO Chinkgam Anand Singh was held today at the Manipur Police Memorial Pillar located at 1st Manipur Rifles Battalion campus. The police officer was killed in an attack by tribal terrorists, militants, at More Eastern Sunshine Ground yesterday. The mortal body was brought by the JAC the localities and relatives at the western gate of Kangla, where floral tributes were paid by the women vendors and later taken to First Manipur Rifles Police Memorial Pillar. In the wreath-laying ceremony, Chief Minister N. Biren Singh and other state ministers as well as high-ranking officers of the Manipur police offered garlands and paid floral tributes to the mortal remains of the police officer. A team of Manipur Rifles also gave a gun salute as a mark of honoring the slain Manipur Rifles personnel. Later, the corpse was taken to his birthplace for last rites.
And approximately RAF, as you know, the RAF was already sent in More area. And yesterday, after this incident, we have sent the forces to More also. And by road, we have sent forces by road. Though there was some ambush on the road where 3 boys got injured. But after that, they have been sent. And in the night, all security forces escorted approximately 60 commandos and other forces. They have gone there. And whatever blockade they had created in More, that has been removed yesterday itself. Combined SF's raid is going on, and we have also identified who was the person who basically the group which indulged in this kind of activity. The investigation is on, and we are in a we hope that we will be able to arrest them very quickly.
And before we wrap this up, just like I promised, every day we must talk about climate change. Next segment focusing on global climate stories. Well, now it is the onset of the winter season in India. And just like the trend that it has been in the recent past, the residents of Delhi NCR are struggling to breathe. Now, the air quality index in the national capital region continues to deteriorate. Overall AQI in the national capital has remained under the very poor category at 336 this very morning. Now, Delhi people are facing breathing issues like congestion, and that raises concern amongst Delhi residents. But why is Delhi's air quality deteriorating? Particulate matter accumulation is a contributor to the declining air quality. There is, of course, a limited rainfall in these months that has led to the buildup of the particulate matter. A noticeable increase in farm fires in the states of Punjab and Haryana is witnessed during the cold months, and it is anticipated that this year's harvest season will be extended beyond its usual time frame. Now, wind direction also plays a pivotal role in Delhi's air pollution dynamics, particularly during the winters. And, of course, the occurrence of temperature inversion during Delhi's cold winter increases pollution for the national capital. On top of that, you've got vehicular and industrial emissions that are significant contributors to the air pollution. Dust storms, firecracker emissions, it is the festival season, and domestic biomass burning are, of course, additional sources here. But air pollution does not only damage the lungs. Air pollution also raises the risk of type 2 diabetes. This said by an landmark Indian study. Now, the 7-year-long study that has been conducted and the research has been held in Delhi and Chennai. The study found that inhaling air with high amounts of PM 2.5 particles led to high blood sugar levels and increased type 2 diabetes incidence. Now, this report, it's a 7-year-long study conducted by research fellows in Delhi and Chennai. The study says inhaling air with high amounts of PM 2.5 particles increases risk of type 2 diabetes. The study also adds that diabetes is more prevalent in urban areas than in rural areas. At least 11.4% Indians are living with diabetes according to this particular study. Interesting facet of the study says 1 month of exposure to PM 2.5 leads to elevated sugar levels. The study also goes on to say that prolonged exposure of 1 year increases risk of diabetes altogether. A lead researcher inside the study quoted has said that air pollution with lifestyle changes had increased the diabetes burden in the entire country. The study also goes on to say that air pollution is causing high risks of diabetes, hypertension, and heart attacks in the country. Now, bringing down pollution can potentially bring down diabetes. There's a direct link to over here, according to the study. And with that, it's a wrap on this segment of Top Stories. Lots more coming right on the other side. Don't go anywhere. News 9 big coverage of 5 assembly polls. Mandate 2023.
Delhi has the fastest growing metro network among G20 nations. From 6 stations in 2002